Do Democrat-run states spend more than states run by Republicans? Well, a newly released analysis suggests they do. Joining me to discuss this and more, Grover Norquist, founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, we appreciate you coming back to visit with us now on America's Forum.
Good to be with you.
Grover, let's get right to the numbers. According to your analysis, there is a significant difference in spending. What I find troubling is all the Democrat-run states increased total spending, while 10 Republican-run states actually decreased their rate of spending. With more spending comes more taxes, and since 2010, Democrat governors have led the charge to increase taxes. Are there some infamous examples of what has transpired stateside from these Democrat governors?
Absolutely. What we did was we looked at states that have a Republican governor and a Republican House and Senate, so total Republican control. It's a little tough sometimes to blame a governor like Chris Christie for the spending practices of an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature. But the 24 states where the Republicans have complete control, we compared them with the 13 states like California and Illinois where the Democrats have complete control. And there you saw the general funds in Democrat states jumped by about 10%. Republican states went up by 6%. But when you get to the part that they can actually, the total spending went up 1% in Republican states, total government spending, and 5.5%, 5 times more in Democrat-controlled states when you get to total expenditures. So there's a huge difference in spending changes, but you also saw that in taxes. Go back to 2011 here. That's over a 2-year period, 2011 to 2013 on spending. When you look at taxes, now this is just governors because it's just done slightly differently. Democrat governors in states run by Democrat governors, 2011 moving to 2013, total government taxes, total taxes went up $58 billion, 11, 12, 13. In Republican governor states, taxes went down by $38 billion. Okay,
that is
so
a striking.
Democrat states up.
That's a striking number,
$58
Grover.
billion in tax increases.
And that's a big number. I want to focus on one of those Republican governors real quick, and that's Governor Rick Perry of Texas. He sees these tax increases as an opportunity for growth in his state. In fact, I just read a report that Texas has 3 of the fastest growing cities in America right now, and he's taking out this on states like California. Let's listen to what Perry recently had to say.
Building a business is tough, but I hear building a business in California is next to impossible. This is Texas Governor Rick Perry, and I have a message for California businesses. Come check out Texas. There are plenty of reasons Texas has been named the best state for doing business for 8 years running. Visit TexasWideOpenForBusiness.com.
All right, there. So Governor Perry making a push for Texas as well. We also have a state like Florida that now has a surplus here. Both of those states do not have the state income tax. But Grover, why would a Democratic governor raise taxes and raise spending when there's clearly success happening in places like Texas and Florida?
Well, short term, the Democrats in each of the 13 completely Democrat-controlled states are raising taxes to pay for the mistakes of the past. They're not reforming their pensions or their civil service government union rules. They're raising taxes rather than reforming government. What the Republicans are doing in the 24 completely Republican states, including Texas and Florida, are reforming government so it costs less, and then when it costs less, they can cut taxes. I do want to suggest, though, that Texas and Rick Perry's governing policies are going to save California. The only thing that saved California and Illinois are good examples of proper, limited, less expensive government that are so attractive that they take the young people out of California and out of Illinois, and the retirees who don't want to die and pay death taxes in California and Illinois, And at some point, even very left-wing Democrat governors and state legislators in California and Illinois will have to reform and turn around and govern differently because of Texas and Florida. So when Texas and Florida do the right thing, they're not just helping the citizens of Texas and Florida, they're being the good example that someday, hopefully years, not decades from now, will save California and save Illinois from themselves.
Well, we take a look at the study appearing on your website, Americans for Tax Reform. Democrat states hike spending at quadruple the rate of GOP states. I want to come back, Grover, to what you're saying long term about a state like California. Perhaps this is an example of Mark Twain's admonition, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Because you look now at California. Jerry Brown ensconced as governor, big doubts about any Republican unseating him. And of course, he's been down this road before. You look back to 1978, the rise of Howard Jarvis and Prop 13 in California, even as Evel Younger was the Republican nominee. He had former President Ford and future President Ronald Reagan doing ads for his campaign, but such was the appeal of Prop 13 under Howard Jarvis that suddenly Jerry Brown had to change his position. You seem to be suggesting long-term that even in California, where electorally the Democrats seem to be very secure, it's going to reach a crisis point financially, and Texas coming in and raiding businesses or attracting businesses like Toyota, leaving California for Texas in terms of its United States operation, that will have an effect in California. Let's drill down for a second. How long do you think it will take for that economic imperative to become apparent to the high-spending, high-tax regime currently ensconced in Sacramento?
I think it could happen in the next 10 years. We're seeing an acceleration of people, talented people, young people leaving Illinois, leaving New York, leaving states like California and Maryland had a millionaire's tax, and then either the millionaires moved or they stopped working because you saw them disappear from the tax rolls. People do respond to changes in the tax code. They will move to a state with no death tax. They will move to a state with no income tax. They will decide to quit working earlier. Their children leave. They never become taxpayers in those states because there aren't jobs in the first place.
Grover, earlier on the show we were talking about the lack of executive leadership from President Obama, and that's why many conservatives are hopeful that the next leader of the Republican Party, the next Republican to sit in the White House, will come from one of the governor's mansions around the country right now. Out of all your research here, was there anything that was striking enough to you to say that one of these Republican governors has a inside track or someone you would like to see be the nominee for the Republican Party in 2016?
Well, here's the good news for the country and for the Republican Party, and that is there's not 1, 2, or 3, but there are 4, 5, or 6 Republican governors who could look you in the eye and convince you that they would do an extremely good job as president, not because they give a good speech, but because you can look at the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years of their being governors. Governor Rick Perry of Texas, certainly. Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin, absolutely. Chris Christie of New Jersey's had a very difficult time because the legislature is completely the other side, but he reduced $130 billion in unfunded liabilities from pensions with the reform he actually got the Democrats to go along with. Huge step forward. Bobby Jindal of Louisiana, phenomenal reforms, massive school choice, tax cuts. Watch Brownback, Governor Brownback of Kansas, extremely competent reformer in that state. Rick Scott of Florida has done tremendous work in turning that state around from the disaster that Crist had turned it into in the previous year. So there are 5 or 6 Republican governors who have track records of success and competence and conservative Reagan governing, that I'd be happy with any one of those guys moving into the White House, and I'm for the guy who can be politically savvy enough to get elected in the Republican primary.
Grover Norquist, founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform, we thank you for your time and your insights, and we look forward to having you back on America's Forum real soon.
Delighted. Good to be with you.
So Grover, being quite diplomatic and ecumenical in terms of identifying a half dozen Republican governors he believes could fill the bill nationally.
But he mentioned Rick Perry first.
He did, and Rick Perry appears to be gearing up. We'll keep our eyes on the Texas governor, and we'll keep our eyes on spending in various state capitals as we revisit this issue in the days ahead. In fact, it's a good topic for you to comment on. Do you believe it makes a difference, the partisan label of the governor in your state? Why don't you tweet us your comment at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum. There's also email and Facebook.